in horses.
In horses.
Year after year, God has proven himself to be most trustworthy. As we look to the future, we declare with the psalmist David,
We trust in the name of the Lord our God.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
I wasn't even sure if it was actually bullets until one of the times we paused, our friend was like, the guy next to us got shot.
People just started dropping around us and everybody tried to stay down. A lot of dead bodies, a lot of people were just piling on top of whoever, even if they're bleeding or not. People like holding people's wounds down, stay down. Girls were in shock and they wouldn't even move.
I don't know how to compare it. I mean, there's nothing I've ever seen on TV or anything, even in a movie, that compares the situation that we just saw.
I saw this one police officer. He just was so brave. He was like jumping over the fence, like to go fight this, like to take on this guy. And I'm like, oh my, like they're so brave.
We're just all sitting there looking at each other, like thinking that we're gonna die. And a security guard got shot right in front of us. Another guy got shot right next to me. You know, we just thought we were gonna die. So I called my mom. To be honest with you, I was just calling my mom to tell my mom that I love her and goodbye.
Good evening. That is audio from the horrendous events that occurred last night in Las Vegas, where the horrendous shooting took place that has left to date at least 58 confirmed people who have been killed and 515 others who've been wounded, including police officers, one of which who is in critical condition, another who suffered minor injuries. It's a day. It's a difficult day for me on a lot of levels, and it brings into square focus really where we should be as believers. So I'm going to begin the program by sharing. This scripture just kind of leaps off the pages for me in this moment. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. I'll read it, and then I'll make some comments, and I'm going to talk a bit about the tragedy that took place in Las Vegas Sundays. Here we go, verse 1. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy. Verse 3, it says heartless. Or the King James, it says without natural affection. Without natural affection. Unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. As I read that, and I've just been, ever since I got the news of what happened in Las Vegas, and I can't go into much detail on this, but I learned of a personal family member's death today. I learned about it today. The question that echoes in my heart is, do we really recognize that we're in the last days? I mean, you read off these scriptures I read, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. You know, when you ask, Are people today lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, boastful, not loving good, without natural affection? Check, 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 check across the board. In other places, in Matthew 24, wars and rumors of war where ethnos will be turned against other ethnos. When the Bible says nation against nation, ethnicities put and striving at one another, earthquakes in diverse places. Do we recognize that we are living in the last days? And if we do recognize we're living in the last days, do we really believe what we profess to believe? Because if we as believers truly recognize that we are in the last days, and two, we really believe what we profess to believe, we probably wouldn't be so scared about telling people about Jesus Christ. We probably wouldn't allow concerns for what Apostle Paul refers to, civilian matters, to consume so much of our time, so much of our thought life, so much of our energy. We probably would yell that the building is on fire. We probably would. Because the thing, and I have a little bit of understanding in this, but I kind of feel like because of the way things are happening in our country, combined with the various ideologies that underpin worldviews or whatever, that we've gotten to a place where when we hear things like 58 people killed in one night, well, you have a man, and I'll get to his name, Paddock, I know that's his last name, who would go through the process of planning to rent a hotel room on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, where reports say he was found with 10 automatic weapons, 10 automatic firearms, 10, and would just let off shots indiscriminately at people like this. People that went to that concert at the Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival in Las Vegas, do you think that they went to that concert thinking, man, today may be the day I have to give an account for my life before Jesus? No. Yet here we are. And one thing I want to do, and Lord, I ask for your help in doing this. Lord, let it be effective. To encourage you to resist the urge to speed by the fact that 58 people are dead. The Bible says to be absent from the body for those who are found in the faith is to be present with the Lord. But if any of these 58 that we know of, because that number could increase, because this is still early in the process, if any of those 58 don't know the Lord, guess where they are going to open up their eyes? And I wonder, this is just my mind, y'all. I'm not trying to make anybody else think like I think, but I wonder how many Christians crossed paths with those people before they went to that concert. How many of them may be relatives that the relative had, an inkling. I would suggest the leading of the Spirit of God to say, why don't you remind him about Jesus? And that was suppressed. No, I don't want to be a stick in the mud. They're on their way to the concert. Let them have a good time. I'll tell them tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. And here we are today. I'm going to encourage you to resist the urge and to resist the invitation from the talking snake, deceptive-laden media to file this away into a corner of political speech, to file it into a cabinet, to bolster your political arguments, and just pause for a moment and reflect on the fact that these are real human beings whose lives are no longer existing. That's it. I'm going to go through a little bit of the factual information as much as I can in this time period. And just so we're all up to date, Clark County Sheriff Joseph Lombardo, who works with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, has confirmed that the number of deceased that they have at the moment is 58 people, with 515 others injured. Law enforcement identified 64-year-old Stephen Craig Paddock from Mesquite, Nevada, as the man who rained gunfire on the Route 91 Harvest County Music Festival attendees from his hotel room on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Witnesses have reported that the shooting lasted between 10 and 20 minutes. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department said SWAT officers responding to the call breached the hotel room and found Paddock dead. Sheriff Lombardo said that it appeared that Paddock killed himself just prior to the officers making entry to his hotel room. And listen, this is why I'm saying this. There's some people, and I've seen many of these reports, that are saying that ISIS is claiming responsibility for this massacre. But to date, the FBI is disputing that. And I'm raising that because in the moment, many on the conservative side, we may want to rush to try to say it's ISIS. And if that is the case, we'll deal with that when that's confirmed. But let's not speed by. Let's not be so easily moved beyond the fact that these are human beings. Let's not allow our hearts to become so callous to where our immediate response is to go to the political argumentation, where we are able to just so easily moved away from the fact that, man, these are people who've lost their lives. And don't worry, I have an example of some of the, regressive ideology that runs to do that. But even though and ISIS has claimed responsibility for this attack, that has been reported. That is the case. But the FBI is saying that they don't have any evidence to support that claim. So they are disputing that at the moment. President Trump, speaking from the White House, called this an act of pure evil. An act of pure evil. Additionally, there was a woman who police officers believe resided with Paddock. Her name was Marilou Danley. They were seeking her because initially there were discussions of this being a lone wolf attack. And then reports indicated that, wait a minute, this Marilou Danley has some information. Well, police were able to detain her and question her. So she has been apprehended by the police. And so far, they have not, the police officers, they have not been able to produce any evidence or information that Marilou Danley was involved in the shooting so far. Eric Paddock, the shooter's brother, said he knew his brother owned firearms, but he didn't think he had any automatic weapons of the type and quantity that were secured from the shooter's hotel room. And here's a ridiculous example of what I'm talking about, of the callousness that sets in with people. CBS vice president and one of their top lawyers, Haley Geftman Gold, was the network's vice president and senior counsel. And you heard me say was for this reason. On Facebook, in an exchange, she says that, quote, I'm actually not even sympathetic because country music fans are often Republican gun toters. Now you think about that. She tweeted this. She posted this on social media at 11 o'clock this morning. How quickly she was able to speed by the absolute carnage that took place there and go immediately to her political corner. So much so to where her human capacity for compassion was completely nullified. That's what I'm talking about, people. We have to be careful, very careful, that we don't allow ourselves to become jaded by these things. I remember in prosecuting homicides in the heinous sex offenses, I could feel myself developing a callousness towards humankind. And I had to pray, Lord, help me, that my compassion for people is not blunted because of the job that I do. And I'm encouraging you, don't allow your capacity for human compassion. Because remember, Paul referred to our ability to recognize such were some of us as being one of the impetus, a source that would drive us to share the gospel. My encouragement is, in the middle of this absolute tragedy where families are suffering, they are hurting because they've lost loved ones, and that people around the country are reeling, that we as believers find a way in this moment to be ministers of reconciliation. That we're able to point people to a fact
that this is not our home, that there is an eternity that supersedes this present reality, and that though we may have difficulty on the earth now, that there is an opportunity for hope that supersedes this. Let that be our commitment.
Another fake news warning. Hi, I'm Matt Staver with Freedom's Call. Liberty Counsel and nearly 50 nonprofit organizations have delivered a strong warning to media outlets regarding the Southern Poverty Law Center's lost credibility. The SPLC makes wide generalizations that harm groups mislabeled by its activism. Its so-called hate groups lacks any semblance of credibility because it targets people in groups for only disagreeing with these groups. The list should read, "These are the groups we hate." The SPLC is a discredited left-wing political activist organization that seeks to silence its political opponents with a false and defamatory hate group label of its own invention. In practice, this also endangers the lives of those people who are the targets. Both conservatives and liberal politicians and media figures have debunked the SPLC as a credible source. Anyone using the SPLC as a source will also be discredited. Learn more about Liberty Counsel at lc.org.
This is a Decency Minute. I'm Bill Johnson. Britain redefined marriage 4 years ago. The United States followed 2 years after. As a stone thrown into a lake causes ripples, so changing one part of culture affects many others. Erasing the demarcation of marriage quickly brought the blurring of gender and the chipping away of constitutional and other rights, such as the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the freedom of conscience. British churches also are being pressured to perform same-sex marriages. In both the U.S. and Britain, good people have lost their jobs for speaking freely about their beliefs on this issue, and businesses have been sued for not violating their consciences. In addition, redefining marriage has opened the Pandora's box of entertainment aimed at transforming children's minds, grooming them for the LGBT agenda. Don't be deceived. God isn't mocked. Whatever we sow, we will also reap. This is a Decency Minute. I'm Bill Johnson.
Why do people who like Brian Fisher tune in to Focal Point?
To hear what he's going to say next.
Let's go to James from Indiana.
There are so many ways to catch the Focal Point program on one of our almost 200 stations, live streaming at afr.net, podcast, phone apps, and if you'd prefer to watch the show, we have Facebook Live on our Focal Point Facebook page. Why do people who don't like Brian Fisher tune into Focal Point?
To hear what he's going to say next.
Join me weekday afternoons at 1 Central.
Christian apologist Frank Turek.
75% of young people walk away from the church once they leave the home, and one of the major reasons is they don't know why Christianity's true.
Join Frank Turek and others at Southern Evangelical Seminary's National Conference on Christian Apologetics, October 13th and 14th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Witness live debate and the premiere of American Family Association's documentary, The God Who Speaks. Online registration ends October 10th. Visit ses.edu for details.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here in American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Abe Hamilton III, your host here. I didn't say this before we went to the break, but that lawyer, Haley, let me get her name right, Haley Guffman Gold, was fired by CBS. And it's amazing, again, how callous people can be in the moment. But as promised on Friday, I said that we would dig into this new tax framework, and I'm so excited to have here on the program none other than my favorite financial guru, my brother in Christ, and I like to say a friend of the program. I've always wanted to say that, but I'll just say it now. Dan Celia. Dan has worked for 35 years as an entrepreneur and businessman, starting 8 corporations and co-founder of 2 others. In 1999, Dan sold his small trust company where he managed over $900 million to go into ministry. Dan has developed and uses a biblically responsible system of financial management with great success, and you can hear Dan every day, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central, right here on American Family Radio, and you can hear Dan on over 600 stations nationwide. Dan, thank you very much for joining me here on the Hamilton Corner.
Abraham, my friend, it's good to be here, and you should tell everybody that you have a new son named Daniel.
Well, everybody knows I have a new son. They didn't know his name until just now.
Yeah. And I'm sure he was named after me. But there's only that. What's that guy in the Bible, right? There's only him. But I'm sure that you guys were thinking about me, so we'll leave it at that. Anyway,
Dan, that's your story. You're sticking to it.
Yeah, that's it, man.
All right. Well, what I wanted to have you on the program to discuss, and you're so in demand, I couldn't get you until today.
It's just too much happening.
Yeah, it's a lot happening. I wanted to be able to discuss with you for the benefit of our listeners. The tax proposal right now is being discussed as a tax framework to talk about some of the details of it, and details, as much details as we can, and then I want to come around to the prospect, what is the possibility or the likelihood that it actually will get passed by this Congress. But let's start, if you would, just set it up for our listeners, the basic framework of the tax plan that's being presented by the leadership in Congress.
Well, the basic framework is, sometimes it's hard to get a little bit of a handle on it for the average person because there's so many stones being thrown from all different sides. And, one thing that we are hearing a whole lot from the left about is just things that aren't true. They're just made up. I mean, I went last, I think it was Thursday, and I was trying to find some of the things they were talking about. I just couldn't find it. It's just not true. It's just not in there.
Can you give us an example?
It's a great talking point.
Can you give us an example?
Well, they talk about the fact that the rich are all going to come out better for this. That major corporations don't pay any tax anyway. So, they're just 2 points that are hot buttons for the American people. I had someone call me on the program last week, said, well, I don't know why you're getting so excited over a tax cut. They don't pay any tax anywhere. So, it's the old story. You say it long enough and people start believing it. And so today in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article, and it was talking about the Dow Industrials. That's an index, folks. That's something we look at. And it's only made up of 30 different stocks. There's only 7 of those 30 that paid less than 21%. So everybody else was well above that, the highest being 35%. The S&P 500 of the nation's largest companies, those top 20 companies are paying 40% in taxes. So, and then, one of those companies, for example, Amazon. So Amazon paying 42% of the revenue in taxes. Can you imagine? I mean, they're doing enough. I'm not, they've got plenty of money. But I'm just saying, when you look at that and you look at what they could be putting back into the economy, that is a company that is likely to do that. So many other companies as well. I'm not a big fan of healthcare companies, but the 2 biggest, Aetna and United Healthcare, all paid over 40% in taxes. So, the point is that corporate America is paying a lot of money in taxes, and it hurts their compatibility. They need to be competitive. They need to be competitive with companies around the world. Not to mention, they need to be able to bring some of their money back here to America, some of the earnings that they've made offshore, and bring that back. And this new tax bill is going to allow for some of those things.
All right. Now, you said new tax bill. So far, we don't have a bill just yet. And some of the highlights, and I'm going to get to the corporate as well, but I just want to tick off some of these things, and we'll discuss these in turn.
Okay.
So the framework indicates that they will reduce the number of tax brackets from the current 7 that we have for individuals down to 3, raising the lowest tax rate up from 10% to 12%, then having a 25% bracket and then a 35% bracket.
Yes.
Then the argument to support the raising of the lowest tax bracket from 10% to 12% is that the standard deduction for individuals would go up from $6,000 per person to $12,000, or for a married couple from $12,000 to $24,000.
Right.
All right. And then the corporate rate, last one, and then we'll go into some other details. The corporate rate would go down from a 35% rate down to 20% in order to allow some of the things that you are talking about to occur. And I do want to get into full expensing and those types of things later, but I want to get your initial take on those top things. The tax rate, the individual rates being reduced from 7 brackets to 3, 12, 25, and 35. Standard deductions going up, doubling for individuals and married couples, and then the corporate tax rate coming down from 35 to 20%.
So it looks as though that the lower tax bracket, the 12% tax bracket, is what's going to happen based on what I've seen. And this all has to be hammered out. Nothing is cast in stone yet. But
there's no bill yet. It's just
there's no
framework
bill yet. Right.
for the conversation.
They're working on it. So this started out as President Trump putting out the scope of what he'd like to see. Then the House Ways and Means Committee came out and put a little meat to the bone on that.
Okay.
And started to put some detail to that and what they were striving to achieve. So that's where we're getting a glance, I should say, of some of the detail. So the 12% bracket, one of the big beneficiaries of that are the people that are in very low income brackets now, because there are some that are still paying a little bit of taxes. They're not going to pay any taxes. There's going to be a dramatic increase in the people that won't pay any federal taxes. It's going to be zero for a lot of people, far more people than that was the case for, because of the way the bracket is structured.
So they will be able to exclude $12,000 from potentially taxable income, which means that'll be much less money that can be taxed, which will raise that tax rate to zero.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. And then there are the people in the 35%, in the middle tax bracket.
25.
Yeah, the middle, that's the middle. So that's the middle tax bracket, the 25% tax bracket. If I have any problem with any of it, I wish that were not less necessary, but I wish it were expanded to count more people in it, because that's the bracket that really is going to have a dramatic impact on the middle class and growing the middle class. During the 1950s, one of the greatest things to come out of World War II was the incredible growth rate of the middle class. And the middle class was driving. There were people during those times that were putting their children through college that were factory line workers all their life, but they earned good wages. Of course, college wasn't crazy like it is now, and they were able to really have a good standard of life. Well, and have opportunities to get ahead, which they did. So this is looking like it's going to be somewhere around the $150,000 range on the upside. So if you're a married couple and you're both not like doctors or anything, but you're professionals and you're working, both of you working, it's not going to be too hard for a lot of people to get over 110,000, and some are talking about 100,000 as the break-off point. If that happens, then they're going to be in the 35% tax bracket where they haven't been before. So their taxes are actually going to go up slightly, but the $12,000 married couple tax credit that they would be receiving will allow them to save about $1,000 is the estimate, $1,000 a year on their taxes.
Well, that sounds good. Now, I don't know if you would like to discuss this, but what is full expensing? What is expensing?
Full expensing is primarily for small businesses and S corporations. So now, if a landscaping contractor, if he goes out now and buys 2 of those big Bobcat walk behind kind of mowers, and I don't know what they cost, I don't have any idea, but I'm going to guess they cost $10,000. So he's going to lay out $20,000 to buy this equipment. He's going to be able, instead of going through the 5, 6, or 7 years of depreciating and taking a little bit of that off every year off his taxes, he's going to be able to fully expense all $20,000 in that year. Well, that's going to have a huge impact for a person like that, because laying out that $20,000 was probably, I don't want to say it was a hardship, because I want to believe that he wouldn't have done it if it was a hardship. But nonetheless, it takes up a lot of working capital. Well, this goes too for larger corporations. So if a larger company buys a bulldozer for, $500,000, they're going to be able to fully expense that in the first year.
Now, and some of the argument is, I agree 100% with what you just said, is that in the current framework, the discussion is having expensing to be temporary, eventually fading off, where some are saying we need to make expensing permanent in order for this to be an effective adjustment concerning our tax structure.
Well, so I think it needs to be permanent. I don't think it needs to be permanent, though, to have an immediate positive effect.
Gotcha.
On the economy. It's going to have an immediate positive effect on the economy. But what we want to see is, if it's permanent, it's going to help those small businesses and companies. It's going to help them plan. They're going to start to say, you know what, 5 years from now, we're going to buy this now. 5 years from now, we're going to have to repurchase, and we're going to have to buy some more. Hopefully this is going to lead to growth, and we're going to have to expand. We're going to have to grow certain things, buy certain things. And the idea of planning, knowing that the outlay is going to come back to, and maybe not all of it, but a lot of it's going to come back to them through the full expensing, will help them plan and be a little bit more efficient in how they operate.
Another provision of the framework is that the proposition is being made to repeal the death tax. Yeah. What is it, and how would that impact our economy once it is repealed?
Well, that's one of my favorite parts of the law. I stand to inherit nothing, unfortunately, but the thing that I love about it, and one of my biggest concerns has been for the last 10 years, is the concern I have for farmers, the concern I have for the second, third, fourth, fifth generation farmers that are going to lose everything if they die. Because, and I know that the left, they don't care much about farmers, but the fact of the matter is, there is no possible way. You have to understand, farmers live week by week, day by day, month by month. They're not wealthy people, but they're very land rich. So they're going to be, it would be nothing for a family farm to have $12, $15, $20 million worth of net worth. Because some of these farms, I talk to farmers every day that are farming thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. So you can imagine, and this is very valuable. Agricultural land is very valuable. And one of the things that everybody has missed, I've talked about it quite often, but everybody has missed in Washington, is the fact that China is coming and buying up our farmland.
Yep.
I mean, they're doing it through holding companies and shelter companies. But, we couldn't go to China and buy farmland, but they come here and they're buying up our farmland, our agriculture. And it's a huge issue. And it's not because the farmers want to sell, but they have to sell half of their land to be able to pay the tax bill in order for them to maintain something that they can make a living with.
Now, here's the $1 million question. Because here we are in this era where the Congress is literally being held hostage by the tyranny of the minority because of the filibuster in the United States Senate. Are you optimistic that we will see tax reform passed by this Congress?
I am, as of last Tuesday. And that was when Judge Roy Moore got elected. And I say that because he sent the shiver up the spines of the royal elites of the Republican Party. He sent a message. You can spend all the money you want.
30 seconds.
But people aren't voting for anybody in the swamp. And I think it was the greatest wake-up call that Congress could have gotten.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Celia. Dan, thank you so much for joining the program. You heard it here first. Dan is optimistic that tax reform will get passed because of the signal sent by Judge Roy Moore, one step closer to being called Senator Roy Moore. More on the Hamilton Corner when we come back after this break.
So what would you do with an extra $500 a month in your budget? $500. This isn't hypothetical, by the way. This is something you may need to think about very soon if you decide to become a member of MediShare. MediShare is a way to pay for your health care, and typically it costs $500 less per month for a family versus other health care plans. So seriously, think about this. You could pay off loans, pay down a mortgage, save the money for retirement, donate to charity. That would be a big deal. But you know what? Here's the best thing. MediShare works. It has 250,000 members, and it's growing fast. With MediShare, not only do you save, you don't have to pay for things you don't believe in either, and that is a beautiful thing too. So here's how you can find out more, and you might actually wind up saving even more than $500 a month. So check into it. Here's the number. Call 855-SALM-23. That's 855-SALM-23. Now available in Montana. 855-PSALM-23.
Hi everyone, Carl Kirby with Reasons for Hope here, talking about the giraffe. Did you know that a giraffe has a huge drinking problem? What's that, you say? The problem is blood rushing to their head when they bend over to get a drink. Think about it. When we bend over, we get a head rush. Now think of the pressure an adult bull giraffe generates with a 2.5-foot long heart that pumps blood 18 feet into the air. The result will be the world's biggest and shortest headache, right before it explodes. The reason it doesn't is nothing short of a miracle. They have arteries with one-way valves that keep the blood from flowing back into their heart, and at the base of their brain they have a tiny mass of blood vessels called the wonder net. That catches the blood and diffuses it to the brain at just the right rate so they don't have a stroke and die. Fact is, this finely tuned piece of machinery had to be working from day one, or the giraffe would have never had to think about another drink again. Instantaneous, meticulous creation. Bam! Now that works. For more information about us, check us out at rforh.com. Stay bold.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next. To be clear, there is a humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico. The island suffered a direct hit from a Category 5 hurricane. The crumbling infrastructure was all but obliterated. Now, the Trump administration has dispatched an army of engineers, doctors, electricians, thousands of military personnel, and relief workers. Puerto Rico's governor says the president has delivered everything they've asked for. Those are the facts you will not hear from the mainstream media. CNN has given a platform to anyone willing to criticize the president. The far-left mayor of San Juan warned they're on the verge of a genocide. But in truth, only 16 people have died. Tragic, but not a genocide. She also said the president was not sending enough food and supplies, unaware she was surrounded by pallets of canned goods. Well, maybe the mayor should stop the political grandstanding and start handing out those cans of Goya beans. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at AFR.net and UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Guarantee to the American people, because of the inaction of the United States Congress, ever increasing prices unless the demand comes down, and the $5 will look like a very low price in the years to come if we are prohibited from finding new reserves, new opportunities to increase supplies.
And guess what this liberal would be all about? This liberal will be all about socializing, would be about basically taking over and the government running all of your companies.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. I'm your host, Abe Hamilton. I will be taking calls this segment, so if you want to be a part of the program where we will discuss the massacre, the unfolding terrorism in Las Vegas, the number to call is 888-589-8840, or if you want to talk taxes, talk about the prospect of the GOP tax plan. Will it pass? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Because, again, it's really hard to say because there really is no bill yet, but do you like the framework? Do you hate the framework? I welcome you to call. The number again is 888-589-8840. Since we were talking taxes, I found it only appropriate to bring back some old audio because what you heard, the exchange was between John Heifmeister, who was the president of Shell Oil in 2009, and Congresswoman Maxine Waters, where you heard from Maxine Waters' own mouth what this liberal, this is her words, not mine, what this liberal would do. This liberal would be all about socializing, and then she caught herself. And I know it was just audio that you heard, but I wish you could have saw the video too. Because when she's catching herself, she has a person sitting on her right saying, oh no, she stepped in it. Oh no. Oh no. I will be all for socializing. No, let me correct that. Basically taking over all of your companies. This is what she said. So when you have people that try to argue, say, Abraham, you are not portraying the position of the progressives properly. You heard it herself. In the United States of America, a sitting congresswoman said she would be all for the government taking over a private industry. Now, here's the question I have for you. Do you think her penchant for government takeover is something that would have been limited to that particular industry? Do you think her penchant for government takeover of industry is something that would be limited to her as an individual? Or is that an ideological proposition that could be rightly exported to all regressives? I have an answer, but I want to know your answer. And she said that in a hearing. So the next question, if you have a person willing to state that publicly, how do you think she feels privately? And since we're talking taxes, as long as we have the filibuster in the United States Senate, where a minority of senators can completely control the congressional agenda, are you excited about tax reform getting pushed? You know, there's a bill that we here at the American Family Association are supporting, where Congressman Trent Franks, one of the few Congress people to speak candidly about the filibuster, is advancing. It's a pain-capable bill that would prohibit abortions after 20 weeks, based on pain capabilities, right? Is that bill going to get the light of day? Is it going to get a vote in the Senate? Because again, all of these measures, they're going to have to overcome the hurdle that is the filibuster, or as I heard Brian Fisher say, the fake-a-buster. Boy, Brian has some good stuff. Will that see the light of day? So these are questions that I have. But to begin the segment with the callers, we're going to go first to Mobile, Alabama, where we have Jacob on the line in Mobile. Jacob, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Thank you. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
If it get any better, I wouldn't be able to stand it.
Go right ahead, sir.
Well, I tell you, this situation that happened, there's a situation in the country that kind of came to me by the Spirit, I believe, a couple of days ago. We're at the very precipice of the country coming together. We got to keep praying. We got to keep praying. And what that lady said about that little statement that she mentioned and got fired behind, you got to realize these folks are seriously hate Donald Trump. They seriously hate the Lord and all of the things that he stands for. And we have to continually be vigilant and pray for this country, because it's something great is about to happen in this country. And you know when that happens, the devil is going to show up.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you very much, man. I will be praying to that end because that's amazing. I heard some audio earlier. I should have brought it on the program. But there was a young man who was at the concert in Las Vegas who, in his own words, he said he entered the concert as an agnostic, but because of the valor displayed by other concert goers and other people shielding some of the younger and more vulnerable people from the onslaught of bullets, that he said the fact that he's still alive now, he's a firm believer that God exists. You know, it's amazing that how as darkness reaches critical mass in some situations that people find themselves turning to God in increased measure. And I sincerely pray that would be the case. And if you're just tuning into the program, the statement that Jacob was referring to that was made, and I was discussing this within the context of an admonition to us to not allow the current happenings to push us into ideological and political corners to where our compassion for humanity is sealed off, and to where this senior lawyer and vice president at CBS, her name, I had it earlier, I keep having to get her name again. Haley Geftman Gold is her name. Haley Geftman Gold. Well, she immediately went to social media and she said this right out of her own mouth. Quote, "I'm actually not even sympathetic because country music fans are often Republican gun toters." End quote. So because of her disdain for what she describes as Republican gun toters, she has no sympathy, zero sympathy for the victims of this shooting. And that is an example of what I'm talking about as to what happens. Well, as I stated earlier, CBS responded rather promptly to her social media activity by firing her. So now she needs to find a new job. But back to the phone lines. We'll go next to Macon, Georgia, where Tina is on the line. Tina, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to comment basically on what you were just talking about, I looked at my Google News and that's what I saw, that this attorney for CBS or whatever had said this about these people, that she was not sympathetic at all towards them because they were Republican. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm every day I'm appalled at how blind our country is. I'm 53 years old, and I have never, my father was in the military until I was about 13. I had a big culture shock when he retired, and I'm always appalled is the word, stunned or in awe would not be the right word to use, about how blind people are at the things they say and the things they feel these days. It's horrible. I honest to God believe we are in the last days. Something is about to happen. I believe that with all my heart. It's very sad when you look at the news and all you can do is cry because you feel so bad about the hate that's in the greatest country in the world.
You're absolutely right, Tina. Thank you so much for your call and for your comments. You're absolutely right. And if you want to join the program, you can do so by calling 888-589-8840. The phone lines are open, 888-589-8840. Tina hit on the very tone that I attempted to strike at the very beginning of the show, that, look, folks, we are in the last days. We are in the last days. We're not warming up. This is not the undercard waiting for the title bout. We are in the last days. So my question is, are we responding as if we believe? Well, let me say it twofold. Are we responding as if, one, we believe we're in the last days, and two, that we really believe what the Bible teaches? I think we will be a bit more proactive in looking for opportunities to introduce the gospel, looking for opportunities to point people to the way of the cross. Because here's the thing. As darkness, one of the sources of scripture I reference consistently, in Isaiah 60, that darkness covers the earth and gross darkness covers the people, but the glory of God has risen upon us. And so as this darkness continues to mount, as Isaiah 60 lays out, there will be people who are casualties of the darkness. Casualties of the darkness, looking for a way out. In the midst of what seems like a hopeless existence for many, they will be looking for someone that could point them to an eternal hope. And when I'm telling you, when someone comes fully confronted by the fact that, man, there's a way out of this mess, and his name is Jesus, and they're able to combine our speech with our feet, being able to see that our walk confirms what we say, you will find people that will be running to embrace the cross. But back to the phone lines. We'll go next to Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma, where Eileen is on the line. Eileen, welcome to the Hamilton Corner.
Hey, thank you so much. I think that Haley and even Hillary Clinton need to really rethink what they're saying. A gun does not shoot itself. There are some sick people in this world, and I didn't hear about it till later this afternoon, but I am so appalled at what's going on and the reaction of the people in high positions. What is the matter with them?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I can tell you that the unfortunate fact is that we have people who they are more committed to their political ideology than they are to being able to share to be able to carry the compassion as a fellow human being. You have it that this lawyer, and I'm pointing to her as an example. She said this having a platform, having a position that she has at CBS. But how many more people have this same sentiment in their personal conversations, in their private lives, that their immediate response is political talking points to politicize the issue? I'm not saying, wait for a minute. We're going to just drive by the fact that the death toll now has been confirmed to where there's 59 dead and the numbers of injured are as many as 527. You see, this thing is continually moving. That's why I'm saying it would be unwise of us to immediately resort to the political conversations before we actually grapple with the pain and suffering that people are going through at the moment. Back to the phone lines where we have Angel on the line. Angel, who's a truck driver. Angel, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Go right ahead.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say something.
Sure.
I'm a Cuban American from Miami. I'm Democrat, and I was watching the TV with the conference, and I was hearing all the question. And I was really upset when some of those guys on the media, they tried to imply about reactions of the president because he supports the Second Amendment and what happened. Like trying to say that because people like him, these tragedies are happening in our country. That's something I don't support, those words. And like I said, I'm Democrat. I support the Second Amendment. I don't support the president in everything he does, but this time he's right in that. And it's a shame for me that somebody used a tragedy just to attack the president.
Thank you very much, Angel. You are spot on. You heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Here's Angel. He said it himself. He's a Cuban American from Miami. He's a Democrat, but he can't stand the fact that people would take advantage of this national tragedy to do nothing more than to pounce on and attack the president. And I'm saying when we get to that spot, we're in trouble as a nation. Last call I'll get to before the show ends. We'll go next to Dallas, Texas, where Dan is on the line from Dallas, Texas. Dan, you have 45 seconds. Go right ahead.
The last three things Jesus Christ said to do before he left this earth was to share the gospel, disciple others, and baptize. We should show compassion to the victims, but our job as the church is to show the love of Jesus Christ, because all the laws in the world, all the political arguing, won't change a person's eternal outcome.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. And you're hitting right on the note that I was driving at. When we see these things happen, it should stir us in such a fashion to where our response is that we should be further impassioned to convey the gospel. And listen, one man plants the seed, another waters, but it's God who gives the increase. We all have different roles to play in that execution. Some of us may be, the equivalent of first responders. We may be the evangelists on the ground. Some of us may be those who maybe have teaching giftings to ground others in the faith and to aid in making disciples. But every single member of the body of Christ is called into ministry. If you are a believer, you are a minister. All the word means is to serve. And as we discharge our faithfulness to God, we have to make sure that we find our spot on that assembly line, if you will, that we are proponents of advancing the Great Commission. Can we not recognize the signs of the times? Don't we see what's happening? We are in the last days.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.